Reeves Immigration Law Group now brings you Immigration Law on Your Side.
All right, thank you for joining us and welcome to another Immigration Law on Your Side from PHLV Radio Studios. This is Kuya Yo. And mainit pa rin sa Las Vegas, mga kaibigan. Triple-digit weather and over the weekend, nagkaroon po tayo ng mga excessive heat warning dito sa Las Vegas. Si Atty. Diza naman sa kinalalagyan niya dyan po sa San Francisco, California ay mas masarap at mas maganda ang kanyang weather. Pero mainit ang pag-uusapan natin yung gabi, excessive heat din. Ang pag-uusapan natin yon because in a perfect world, you may marry a kind, loving spouse who happily petitions you for a green card. But as we all know, we do not live in a perfect world. What if your spouse is physically or emotionally abusive? What if he or she is using your lack of immigration status against you? Sadly, this scenario, mga kababayan, is more common than most people think. Fortunately, immigration law offers some protections to deal with such a situation. And kasama natin yung gabi si Atty. Flomy Diza ng Reeves Immigration Law Group who will walk us through the process of obtaining a green card for the Victims of Violence or the Violence Against Women Act or VAWA. So i-welcome na po natin si Atty. Diza. Magandang gabi po sa iyo, Atty. Diza.
Magandang gabi, Kuya Johan, at syempre sa lahat ng viewers and listeners natin, magandang gabi rin po sa inyong lahat. At sa Pilipinas, magandang umaga po sa inyo. At nabanggit mo nga, maganda pa rin ang weather ng Bay Area. In fact, may nagsusweater mga tao dito dahil malamig. Right, malamig ang simoy ng Bay. Kaya nasa 50s and 60s tayo. And I know dyan sa inyo, nasa triple digit pa rin. So, medyo mas mainit dyan dahil summer na.
Summer na summer. Mukhang hindi tinatamaan ng summer ng San Francisco.
That's true, that's true.
Pero attorney, more exciting than that is our topic tonight. Ito pong nabanggit natin kaninang Violence Against Women Act. Attorney, maipaliwanag po natin sa ating mga tagapakinig. Ano po itong VAWA? Ano po ito, attorney?
Yes, Kuya Johan, mainit ang ating topic ngayon. It's called the Violence Against Women Act, otherwise known as the VAWA. At sa ating discussion ngayon, hindi lang ho applicable sa mga women, but also there are many applicants and victims na mga lalaki or men. So it also, we call it battered spouse. So yung Violence Against Women Act, Kuya Johan, is Congressional Act enacted by the US Congress noong 1994 pa ito, because of the disturbing findings that there are thousands of spouses and children of US citizens who were victims of domestic violence, and unable to leave yung kanilang relationship because their spouse or parent are dependent, meaning they are the petitioners in obtaining their green card. Now, itong VAWA na to, Kuya Johan, is a safe haven for those individuals. As I mentioned, it applies to both men and women, that they are able to leave the relationship and be able to file a petition for green card, otherwise known as self-petition. They no longer need the participation or cooperation ng kanilang spouse o yung kanilang yung spouse o yung kanilang magulang. So this is very informative, Kuya Johan, dahil syempre pag you are subjected to battery and extreme cruelty and titiisin mo na lang yon, di ba? Magpapakamartir ka because of course you're waiting for the actual green card or probably you're waiting for you to become a US citizen. But sa mga kababayan natin at mga nanonood dito, it's not the end of the world na kailangan yung stay sa relationship na yan because mayroong paraan para po kayo ay makakuha ng green card if you are married to a citizen or a lawful permanent resident.
Attorney, nabanggit nyo yung self-petition. So sila mismo ang mag-petition sa sarili nila. Hindi nila kailangan ng cooperation noong spouse niya na supposedly yun ang mag-petition sa kanya. Attorney, ano po ba ang mga parameters nito para maging eligible ang isang victim para mag-self-petition?
Yes, Kuya Johan, ang biktima ay either spouse, spouse or ex-spouse. Pwede rin yung nag-divorce na kayo or namatay na yung abusive petitioner or abusive spouse or parent. So unang-una yan, married po kayo sa US citizen or a lawful permanent resident. Or you were previously married pero nag-divorce na kayo. At pag-usapan din natin kung kailan ang timing ng filing, right? Or namatay na yung petitioner o yung spouse po ninyo or magulang. Pangalawa, it also applies to children of abusive citizens or lawful permanent residents. So, pangatlo, applies also to non-citizen parent. Kung ay naabuso, Kuya Johan, siyempre yung anak, di ba? So, those are the people who will benefit from this battered spouse petition. Now, siyempre, importante din yan, Kuya Johan, is siyempre pag you're saying that you're married to a citizen or a lawful permanent resident, you also have to prove that the marriage or the relationship is bona fide, right? Parang yung napag-usapan natin dati that you're going to get a green card through marriage, you have to prove that there's a bona fide relationship, and you have to show that there was a cohabitation, no? And how do you prove that? Siyempre, kailangan we prove that there's one residence and you've been paying taxes together, that you have joint bank accounts, you also have a joint rental agreement, probably you have children, you took the vacation together, right? So those are the evidence that you need to show that this is a legitimate or bona fide relationship.
Mm-hmm. So during the time of application, attorney, nitong biktima, ano ang kanyang immigration status here in the United States? Naghihintay siya ng some benefit from the spouse. Ano po ba, attorney?
Yes, maraming sitwasyon yan, Kuya Johan. Pwedeng, halimbawa na i-file na yung petition sa kayo adjustment of status. So, hintay na lang halimbawa ng interview. So, paano mangyayari yun, attorney? Meron na akong pending na adjustment. May petition pa yung asawa ko, yung I-130, for example, di ba? So, naghintay lang ng interview. So, posible rin yan na you don't have to stay in an abusive relationship. So, it's really hard for me as an immigration attorney telling prospective clients, Kuya Johan, stay there and wait for an interview. Right? Usually, we tell them that, look, you know better than anyone else. If you think that your life is in danger, you need to move out kasi may paraan naman to get your green card. Or hindi lang yan, if you think that wala namang physical abuse, for example, pero yung emotional naman, di ba? Parang masisiraan ka na ng bait dahil sa mga pinagagawa sa'yo ng US citizen spouse mo, then of course you can also leave. So those are the possible scenarios, not only when there's a pending adjustment, but it's also a possibility, Kuya Johan, where nothing has been filed yet. Right?
Wow.
So kakasal lang kayo dahil siyempre siguro naghintay kayo ng opportunity na i-file. Halimbawa, nag-iipon po kayo para sa filing fees or hinihintay nyo yung result para dun sa immigration records nyo. You've been married for like 3 months, then you realize na, abusive pala yung inyong napangasawa, then you can also file even if there's no pending adjustment. Or regardless of your status, and the good thing about this VAWA application, Kuya Johan, is, regardless yung status ng beneficiary or yung applicant, out of status na siya, pending adjustment, pumasok pa man siya as a J1, right? Pumasok pa man siya as a student, as a crewman, or as an employment na nag-expire na, overstay na kayo of many years. So, this helped for a lot of mga kababayan natin, hindi na-realize na pwede pala silang mag-file. And there are also situations, Kuya Johan, where when the applicant was only granted yung 2 years, the 2 years residency, alam na pag-usapan natin doon, where, eventually they have to file for the 751. But, yung 2 taon na binigay na conditional green card, and before they can file for the 751, nagkaroon ng problema sa relationship, right? Nagiging abusive yung US citizen spouse, then the applicant can also file for a waiver. Ito instead of both of them will be filing a joint petition to remove condition, then the beneficiary, yung conditional resident spouse can file by him or herself, without the cooperation of the US citizen, claiming that he or she was subjected to a battery during the marriage. So, yun yung sitwasyon ng ating mga kababayan, Kuya Johan. Nasa status sila, na wala ng status, anumang klase ang kanilang entry sa US, or nasa green card holder sila na hindi pa natatapos yung 2 years, they can avail of this battered spouse petition or application.
Can the abuser be an LPR pa lang siya? Na may green card pa lang yung abuser?
yes, Kuya Johan, it needs the abuser or the U.S. citizen parent or spouse needs to be a U.S. citizen. That's number one. Or could be a green card holder or lawful permanent resident, right? So yun yung qualifications. Now, the only difference is yung subject to a preference category kasi kung latawag nito kung lawful permanent resident lang yung abuser, di ba? Dahil as we know from the Philippines, as of now, available and current ng F2A. So ganun din kung green card holder lang yung tawag nito yung abuser, paghihintay ng priority date. But fortunately now, for the last 6 months, if you look at the visa bulletin ng F2A, yung green card holder spouse petitioning another spouse, is already available and current. So in other words, pag nasa US po kayo, right, at green card holder lang yung inyong spouse who is abuser, pwede na rin kayo mag-file ng green card at the same time. And this is also the advantage, Kuya Johan, ng VAWA because hindi even if the applicant is already overstayed, pwede siyang mag-apply concurrently ng battered spouse petition and green card at the same time. Now kasi available and current na yung visa, right? So unlike kung let's say green card holder yung asawa mo dito at you're living together kahit ilang pang anak ninyo, hindi ka pwedeng mag-green card kung kayo ay overstay na, di ba? Kung hindi kayo subject ng 245I. But in a situation for the battered spouse, yung napapatawad yung overstay, yung asawa ng green card holder. So, yung pwede nang i-file kaagad ng petition at the same time yung tawag nito, yung green card application.
Mhm. So mahalagang alam natin pala, attorney, yung timing kung kailan dapat i-file itong self-petition. If the marriage, for example, ended in a divorce, how long can the victim, so to speak, can apply? Kailangan bang i-apply niya kaagad dahil nag-divorce na kami, bukas ba kailangan i-apply niya na kaagad, attorney?
Kailangan within 2 years, Kuya Johan.
Within 2 years?
Say, okay. 2 years. Kasi otherwise, nag-expire yung right mo to file for VAWA. Maraming mga client na dumating sa amin after 2 years. We find out na, magto 2 years na yung kanilang divorce at wala pang na-file. So I really strongly advise sa mga kababayan natin kung meron silang abuse or in abusive relationship to file right away kasi ma-forfeit yung right nila to file the VAWA application pag more than 2 years na yung divorce. So dapat within 2 years. And the same time din, Kuya Johan, death of the abuser, kailangan within 2 years din. Diba? So hindi po pwede na, 10 taon nang patay yung asawa ko but I was, sexually assaulted or I was, physically abused, then you can no longer file, the application if, beyond 2 years from death or 2 years from divorce.
How about, attorney, if the self-petitioner remarries, after the divorce, biglang nakakuha, may nakilalang bagong pwedeng mapangasawa?
Well, hopefully, Kuya Johan, yung mapapangasawa niya sa US citizen.
Okay.
para ma-petition siya. Right?
Kung hindi, attorney.
Kung mapapangasawa niya ay lawful permanent resident pa lang na maghihintay ng another 5 years bago mag-citizen, or out of status din na naghintay ng immigration reform, right? Unfortunately, mapo-forfeit din yung rights ng applicant to file the battered spouse petition. So the remarriage of the applicant will forfeit yung right niya to file the VAWA. Now, unless the marriage took place pag na-approve na yung battered spouse petition, Kuya Johan. So for example, pwede kasing i-file mauna yung Kuya Johan, yung petition muna, right? And then hintayin niya bago i-file yung green card. Pero strategy-wise, bilang abogado, ina-assess namin yung kaso where, if they're willing to take the risk na i-file na rin yung green card kasi available lalo na kung US citizen yung petitioner, right? And as I said, kahit green card holder yung petitioner, available na ang visa ngayon. So what we do is we file the battered spouse application concurrently with the adjustment of status or the green card application and the work authorization and advance parole, right? So, para makakuha rin ng work authorization yung applicant. Pero, for example, yung mga situations where, hindi ko naman kailangan ng work authorization, right? Kailangan i-file ko muna itong VAWA and see kung ma-approve ito, right? Dapat hindi muna mag-aasawa yung applicant. But once the VAWA is approved, right, pwede na mag-asawa. And then if-file nyo yung green card application through that approved VAWA application.
Wow, okay. So mahalaga ang timing, mga kababayan. But after all these, attorney, what if the self-petitioner or the victim of the abuse is ineligible to apply for VAWA? Is there any other relief having been into this situation, attorney?
Yes, kung ang kung let's say yung aplikante ay was a victim of domestic violence, Kuya Johan, at US citizen yung kanyang asawa or lawful permanent resident, yes, they can file for a battered spouse. That's the easiest and fastest way kasi para ka rin lang, tinutuloy mo lang yon. It's an unfortunate event sa mga kababayan natin na nagkaroon sila ng in an abusive relationship, right? But they can be able to get the green card through that self-petition. Now, kung let's say yung inyong asawa or yung magulang ay wala ring papel, di ba? Let's say nasa H1B status siya or out of status din or nag-cross the border na wala ring status o walang papel, you cannot file for VAWA because the abuser needs to be, as we mentioned, needs to be a US citizen or a lawful permanent resident. So kung walang status po yung abuser, hindi pwede mag-file ng VAWA or yung battered spouse yung aplikante. But remember, Kuya Johan, meron ding available relief sa mga ganyang sitwasyon, right? So even if they are unable to file for VAWA, pwede silang mag-file ng U visa, right? Yung victim of crime, provided, of course, they reported the incident sa police. So let's say tumawag sila ng 911, tumawag ng police o nag-report sa police. Kasi isa sa mga requirements po, as we mentioned in our previous discussions, ang U visa o yung victim of crime, kailangan ho ng cooperation ng biktima, di ba? That, the cooperation to the police or to the prosecutor and even to testify. Kasi otherwise, hindi ka makapag-avail ng U visa. Kailangan mo ng certification from them stating that you cooperated and then para magpa-file ng U visa. So assuming, and even the applicant, Kuya Johan, pwede rin siya mag-file ng U visa at the same time. Kaya lang, mas mabilis kasi ang battered spouse petition. So kung available din sa yung U visa dahil nag-report ka ng police, meron kang mga bruises and hospital records, and you reported to the police, between filing for a battered spouse and a U visa, doon ka na sa battered spouse kasi pwede ka na magkaroon ng work authorization. Yung U visa kasi, Kuya Johan, kukuha ka pa ng certification, right? Magpa-file ka pa ng U visa application, and that takes about, ngayon 4 to 5 years bago nila i-decide yung U visa. So, mas mabuti na lang yung battered spouse, ang route po ninyo with the adjustment para makakuha na kayo ng, ng work authorization within 3 to 6 months from the time you file. So, yun ang advantage ng battered spouse. So, yun yung available relief sa mga kababayan natin na kung ang kanilang napangasawa ay walang status o walang wala ring silang papel dito sa US.
Bahagyan yung nabanggit, attorney, yung mga ways by which you'd be able to document the abuse. Aside from calling the police, meron kang record sa 911, attorney. Ano pa po ba ang ibang pwedeng pruweba para masabi mo sa immigration na ikaw ay biktima nga?
Yes, the good thing about this application sa mga kababayan natin nakikinig is meron confidentiality, right? Most spouses, that came to us would say, Attorney, I don't want to proceed because ayaw ko rin mapahamak yung aking asawa. Anak siya ng mga, tatay or nanay siya ng mga anak ko and I don't want her or him to be in trouble. Lalo na kung green card holder lang yung spouse, or ayaw din na sabihin baka kalkalin yan at baka ikulong, at mapahamak ako. Nandun yung fear diba? So it's really hard for them to go to the police for example, or it's hard for them to go to the hospital kasi natatakot din sila na baka mapahamak yung asawa or pati sila mapahamak at makulong. So nandun yung fear. Victims of domestic violence, Kuya Johan, it's really hard for them to accept din the reality na, na pangasawa nila is abuser and sometimes in denial sila. So what I tell them is, you look back and write down everything that happened to your relationship. For example, dalawang buwan man kayo nagsama, 2 taon kayo nagsama, go back in time and see what are these acts that you think would make you, you felt abused, physically, not physically, but emotionally, psychologically, and financially, right? So, hindi lang ho kailangan ng police report or medical report. As we mentioned, kailangan natin lang i-document a very long statement from you, right? What happened to the marriage. It's not only, of course, the abuse muna, pero siyempre ikwento mo muna, how the relationship started, for the good times, as you mentioned, that he was once upon a time a loving and compassionate spouse, right? Then nag-turn out na ito pala yung true colors niya, and you have to discuss every single thing that happened to you, right? So let's say, you went out with friends, and pinapansin niya yung accent mo because you don't speak English very well, ginagaya yung accent mo, of course, or hindi kanya pinapakilala, or ayaw niya kumakain ka ng tawag nito, ng rice, ng kanin, right? Sasabihin sa'yo, or probably nagluluto ka ng local dishes na ayaw niya ng and sometimes bad words come out from his or her mouth. Lahat yun, titignan mo at i-document mo yan because those are going to be very, very helpful. So it's your statement, a very long detailed statement consisting of this pattern of abuse that you can show to the USCIS. So kahit wala kang report, wala kang police report or medical report, your statement would be sufficient, right, to convince USCIS. Now, what we advise kung walang mga police report or medical report, Kuya Johan, is for the applicant, as we mentioned, to make a detailed statement, and kukuha rin siya ng mga witnesses, right, from family and friends, na napagkukwentuhan niya na ito one time, dumating kami or nag-attend kami ng party, iniwan niya ako and naglakad ako for how many miles, or I took a cab in the middle of the night, or one time nag-away kami, pinalayas niya ako at wala akong mapuntahan. It was snowing and I have no place to go. Right? So kailangan mo rin ng statement, and tinawagan ko yung kaibigan ko si Maria to pick me up. So si Maria na magte-testify na confirming, corroborating yung statement that she actually did pick up yung applicant. So those are very helpful, Kuya Johan. And aside from the witnesses, of course, kailangan pa rin ng psychological evaluation. Right? That's really important kasi makakatulong yon to express themselves then, aside from the statement and aside from the supporting affidavits ng mga kaibigan o mga kamag-anak, very helpful din ang psychological evaluation from a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist, right? So you sit down with them, discuss your concern, your issues with them, and how the relationship develop into an abusive relationship, and how difficult for you to leave the relationship, and what's the impact on yourself doon sa relationship. So those are helpful evidence, Kuya Johan, na i-provide natin sa USCIS to convince them that you are indeed in a abusive relationship that merits an approval of your VAWA application, right? And eventually approval of your green card.
Okay, so marami ng mga examples na bahagyang nabanggit ni Attorney kung ano ang ilang mga examples ng abuse. We'll head over to a break, Attorney. We'll just remind our friends na mga nakatutok ngayon, especially those na nakatutok sa ating app and those listening to us in our podcast version. We'll just remind them of the phone numbers and the contact information of Reeves Immigration Law Group in San Francisco, California. Sa pagbabalik po namin, mga kaibigan, na sa ating immigration law on your side, medyo dadagdagan pa natin, tatanungin natin kay Attorney kung ano pa ang iba pang mga examples ng mga abuse. I'm sure nasa isip nyo na yan kung ano yung mga gusto nyo itanong kay Attorney. Ito ba, nagko-constitute ba ito ng abuse? Sa pagbabalik po ng Immigration Law on Your Side, dito lamang po sa PHLV Radio. We're here every Wednesday, mga kaibigan, 7 p.m. Pacific Time, right here at PHLV Radio. We'll be right back.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has been representing immigrants for nearly 40 years. Reeves Immigration Law Group has been fighting for its clients through experience and expertise. With immigration lawyers you can access at reasonable fees, even on Saturday. Payment plans are also available. Call us for your immigration solutions. We can do worldwide telephone and Skype consultations. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009. Reeves Immigration Law Group has offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, China, and Philippines. See us at www.rreeves.com. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009.
Alright, nagbabalik po ang Immigration Law on your side right here at PHLV Radio. I am coming from Las Vegas, Nevada sa PHLV Radio Studio. And ating kaibigan si Attorney Flomy Diza is coming from Reeves Immigration Law Group in San Francisco, California. We'll put it on the screen how you'll be able to contact Attorney Diza. Ang pinag-uusapan po natin ngayong gabi mga kababayan para sa ating mga late tuners is the process to get a green card under the Violence Against Women Act or VAWA, Family-Based Immigration. Attorney, bago tayo nag-break, nababanggit nyo ng bahagya ang ilan sa mga examples ng abuse. Ano pa po ba ang very, very common na inirereklamo ng mga victims sa ganitong sitwasyon? Ano pang ibang sitwasyon?
The very common, Kuya Johan, sa mga clients natin, regardless of their nationality, is for the abuser to use yung immigration status ng applicant. Di ba? Sasabihin niya, wala kang papel, right? Wala kang status, overstay ka na, do this, gagawin mo ito, ibigay mo sa akin lahat ng mga kita mo, right? Or do
blackmail,
this
parang bina-blackmail.
I-report kita sa immigration. So, nandun yung intimidation and threat, Kuya Johan. Mm-hmm. Right? So, very, very common yan. Or, itinatago yung passport. Mga sitwasyon na ganyan, itatago yung passport, itatago yung green card holder, halimbawa naghintay ng 2 taon, itatago yung green card para hindi makaalis sa bahay. And those are very common then, especially kung wala pa tayong police report or wala tayong medical report. And of course, we don't want you to to be in that situation, pero kung may mga threats and intimidation po sa inyo that could constitute an abuse. And of course, forcing someone else to have sex, especially if you don't feel like doing it, that could also constitute an abuse. Lalong-lalo na siyempre personal choice mo yun, although most spouse would say that's their obligation, but there are situations where the other spouse refuses to do so for whatever reason, but if that becomes a pattern, Kuya Johan, that also constitute an abuse. So, and also hindi lang physical or emotional, pwede rin financial, right? Lalo na dyan sa area mo, Kuya Johan, where nandiyan yung mga casino, di ba? So, may mga clients where, attorney, ginamit yung aming joint account, di ba? Kasi kailangan i-prove natin sa immigration na kasama tayo, so lahat ng kanilang sweldo nakalagay din sa kanilang joint account, pero ginagamit yung kanyang ATM para i-deposit sa casino dyan sa Las Vegas, di ba? So, nauubos yung kanilang, yung kanilang savings na para sa kanilang basic needs dapat mapunta, napupunta lang sa paggagambol dyan sa casino. So those can be possible scenarios. There are many situations, Kuya Johan. It's hindi lang yung hurting your feelings, hurting you emotionally, physically, and financially, but also, maraming paraan. Ikwento lang po ninyo kung ano yung sitwasyon that we can, that we are able to come up with a good discussion of your case. Now, what I tell my clients is, the immigration is asking for an abuse, right? It's not a simple abuse. It's kind of extreme. The law defines as extreme cruelty or battery. So in a sense na yung kahit walang physical or walang physical abuse, right? Na wala kang police report or medical report, yung mga pattern of abuse, yung repeated acts na nagiging annoying sa'yo, right? Kini-question yung religion mo, kini-question yung cultural belief mo, right? Yung accent mo and everything na nadadown, ang feeling mo is nadadowngrade ka, di ba? Or tawag nito, nawawalan ka ng moral just because yun ang palaging sinasabi ng asawa mo, that can constitute an extreme abuse. That's why it's really important to document, lalo na kung gano'ng katagal yung relationship mo. But even then, as I mentioned, yung pinaka shortest na relationship that we were able to win, Kuya Johan, was a month that this couple cohabited. No? Hindi yung tagal ng pagsasama, hindi tagal sa dami ng mga abuse, but also like what I'll tell my clients is, you don't have to wait that something happens to yourself, right? Either you'll get hurt, right? Or either you lose your sanity dahil you continue to live with this person. So it's, and immigration buys that, bought that argument na hindi mo kailangan mag-stay doon ng katagal. Kasi isa sa mga argument ng government attorney at that point, how can you prove to us na, one month lang na nagsama kayo that this is a legitimate marriage? Because as we mentioned, Kuya Johan, for you to be able to get this VAWA approval is you need to prove a bona fide relationship, right? And then also you have to prove that there was an extreme abuse. And sometimes this is the more difficult part, lalo na kung walang police report or medical reports. But as we mentioned, this could be remedied by your detailed statement, affidavit from friends, and also psychological evaluation. And also, kailangan din i-prove, Kuya Johan, that the applicant is a person of good moral character. Hindi siya yung tipong, may criminal records. The only violation that this person committed was either, entering without inspection or overstaying their visa. So, yun yung mga requirements ng battered spouse. And this is a very good remedy sa mga client natin who unfortunately were separated or who thinks that their spouse is not cooperating or using their status as a new way to abuse them. So yun yung paraan, Kuya Johan, at yung mga samples, very common examples na nakikita natin sa mga prospective clients, mga clients who had experienced abuse with their spouse or with their parents.
I was wondering, attorney, because in this day and age of itong mga nangyayaring mga racial abuse in our society, and of course, very normal na rin ang interracial marriages ngayon, nangyayari po ba yan, attorney, na because of racial abuse, na kunwari ibang lahi yung asawang lalaki at yung asawa namang babae ay Pilipina, for example, and then nakakatanggap siya ng mga racial comments tungkol sa kanyang katulad nung nabanggit mo kanina, yung kanyang accent, yung mga ganon. Kung paulit-ulit at iba't ibang mga racial comments ang ibinibigay sa kanyang asawa, ito po ba ay isang abuse na pwedeng magamit?
It is, Kuya Johan, kasi dapat, we respect, whatever the culture we came from, we need to respect that. But because alam naman, lalo na yung mga kinokorek yung accent, right? Or yung pronunciation, right? Siyempre, ang hirap lalo na kung dumating dito sa US and medyo may edad na, di ba? Na, wala yung accent, intindihan pa rin yung English, but, a lot of abuser would use that, you go back to where you come from, buwi ka na lang at magbukid ka or something, magtanim ka sa bukid, tanim ka ng kamote. They know all those expressions, right? So those are abusive. Those are what we call verbal abuse, Kuya Johan, that, if it continues to be uttered by the abuser, then it becomes considered as an extreme verbal abuse.
And it doesn't even have to be another race. Kung kahit kapwa former Filipino yung isa, it will be still an abuse. Ano po, attorney?
Yes, Kuya, lalo na kung dito nalaki yung US citizen. Diba?
Yeah.
Siyempre nakikita niya na ganito yung kino-compare ka niya sa iba, lalo na if you're with friends and then you're in conversation with your friends and kino-correct yung grammar mo or yung pronunciation mo, then that would constitute verbal abuse as well.
Mm-hmm. So, attorney, I'm sure may mga nagtatanong na rin sa ating mga listeners and viewers right now if they have filed for this, kung nag-self-petition na sila because of this VAWA, will they be allowed to work, or is there, tawag dito, yung work permit na pwedeng maka-apply sila?
The good thing about this VAWA, Kuya Johan, is, as we mentioned, if the abuser is a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, pwedeng concurrent filing with the adjustment. So what it means is the applicant is able to get the work authorization, right? And even advance parole, right? Lalo na yung matagal ng, wala dito sa, hindi nakaka-uwi, and they are able to get those. Yeah, pwede yun, Kuya Johan. The processing time for VAWA is about 2 years. So while waiting for the actual approval ng kanilang petition or application, pwede sila magkaroon ng work authorization. Note sa ating mga kababayan, as we mentioned, yung crewman, right? Yung mga crewman, if you're married to a US citizen and you were subjected to extreme battery and cruelty, pwede kayo mag-battered spouse. Kahit hindi kayo 245I, you're not subject to the ban. Kasi yung mga crewman, Kuya Johan, di ba, kahit mag-asawa sila ng US citizen or have children of their own, hindi sila pwede mag-adjust ng status dito because of their crewman entry. Unless, they are subject to 245I or they have to do the provisional waiver. Mag-waiver sila kasi and then they have to depart the US and get their green card sa Pilipinas. So this is also a good option if they were subject to an abusive relationship to from a US citizen spouse or a lawful permanent resident spouse.
And also, Attorney, on our previous episodes, pag-usapan natin yung mga removal proceedings. Sometimes you get yourself into this situation that you will be removed already from the United States. What if this person who is already under removal proceedings, magkiklaim siya na, I am a battered spouse. Can this be used to some sort of relief or cancel the removal, Attorney, itong VAWA?
That's really a good question, Kuya Johan, kasi yung discussion natin kanina with the VAWA application, that's a petition, yung self-petition na sinasabi natin with the USCIS yan, di ba? So on the form I-360. So sa USCIS mo ipa-file yan. And you have to wait for the processing time. Usually it takes about 2 to 3 years. But when you are in removal proceedings, pwede mong form of relief yan, that you don't have to file for the I-360, you can file for the VAWA, what we call VAWA cancellation. Meaning, you just need to establish that you're in the U.S. for 3 years, right? And you were subjected to extreme battery and cruelty, and the immigration judge is able to, to hear your case. Kumbaga, hindi ka na ibabalik pa sa immigration para hintayin yung approval ng VAWA mo. But the judge can hear and decide the case right away. And this is a good, relief, and a very viable relief sa ating mga kababayan who are subjected to extreme cruelty and battery, and they are in removal proceedings. Ito yung tinatawag po natin na VAWA cancellation of removal.
Wow, okay. So, wealth of information mga kaibigan ngayong gabi sa ating immigration law on your side dito po sa PHLV Radio. Maraming salamat po, Attorney. We are going to, of course, respond to your questions mga kababayan. Just comment dito po sa ating post. Also, we're on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. Medyo maraming nakatutok din sa ating mga HD televisions kay Attorney Diza. And mag-comment lamang po kung nasa Amazon Fire TV po kayo, mangyari po lamang na i-email nyo mga tanong sa amin dito sa PHLV Radio at makakarating po kay Attorney Diza. info@phlvradio.com, and then mababanggit din ni Attorney ang kanyang mga contact numbers. Attorney, unless you still have other items to discuss of VAWA, I would give you the floor to invite our audience para po tumawag sa inyo o kaya kumonsulta kung meron po silang mga sitwasyon hinggil sa immigration na kailangang malinawan. Go ahead po, Attorney.
Well, maraming salamat, Kuya Johan, again for this opportunity to render public service sa ating mga kababayan. Just a reminder sa mga nakikinig at nanonood dito who's still, hesitating to consult an attorney. Unang-una po, meron tayong attorney-client confidentiality, right? So, whatever discussions you have with us remains in confidence. Kahit kilala namin yung asawa nyo, we're not going to discuss your case. It remains with us. As attorney, we respect your privacy. We don't discuss your case. So kung natatakot kayo, you tell us, your concerns. Sabihin niyo sa amin lahat ang nangyari, and then we can remedy and probably help you, navigate yung process ng VAWA application, because this is a very sensitive, application, Kuya Johan, because you go into the privacy, ng individuals nito. At siyempre babalikan niya yung mga bad things, the event that happens to them, and it's really hard for them to, again, to narrate that unfortunate event. But anyway, yan po ang tandaan nyo, meron tayong attorney-client confidentiality, and as of now, we are now open in-person consultation at Reeves Immigration Law Group dito sa San Francisco and LA, and sa aming mga overseas offices. We still charge for free kung kayo pa pupunta sa opisina namin, but now we charge $100 for Zoom or telephone consultation that will be credited towards your contract, if you eventually decided to hire our services. And again, lahat ng mga viewers and listeners natin, hopefully you learned something today. At kung may mga kamag-anak kayo who are affected by or impacted by an abusive relationship, let them know and let's share our discussion with Kuya Johan, PHLV Radio, and keep watching, continue listening to our program and all programs ng PHLV Radio. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Diza. Nanggagaling po sa Reeves Immigration Law Group dyan po sa San Francisco, California. May opisina po sila dyan sa LA and then sa China and dyan po sa Makati dyan sa Pilipinas. We'll leave you with the numbers and the information ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. Pero sa www.rreeves.com makikita nyo po lahat ng information ng ating mga kaibigan sa Reeves Immigration Law Group. So, Attorney, maraming salamat and we hope to see you here pretty soon in Las Vegas.
Yes, hope to see you soon, Kuya Johan. Very soon.
Okay, wonderful. Mga kaibigan, that's another immigration law on your side right here at PHLV Radio, brought to you by Reeves Immigration Law Group. We're here every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, and that's 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Maraming salamat po, and we will see you next time.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has just brought you Immigration Law on Your Side. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific on PHLV Radio.